Thank you for joining us for part 3 discussion of forgiveness.
It's okay, Natasha. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right. No, this is good. This has been great. So
Yeah.
again, it's so much, in here about unforgiveness. Again, shout out to Maria doing this 31-day challenge. So you guys check out the podcast.
Check it out.
Check it out.
Check it out.
So
Check it out.
I'm gonna move on to day 12, right?
All right.
So on day 12,
Mhm.
you went over to Beatitudes.
I
Lord.
did.
You went over to
Oh,
Beatitudes.
Yeah.
So you said something that all believers should use like a shield.
man. Mhm.
You said because we are peacemakers,
Mhm.
it does not mean we are people pleasers.
Glory to God. When I heard that, I was like,
Doesn't mean
Right.
we're people pleasers.
Yes.
It does not.
Yeah.
It does not mean.
And so sometimes people think, because you're a follower of Christ, and he called us peacemakers, that you just gotta take anything.
Mm-mm.
So come on, girl.
And that is coming from a reforming people pleaser. And I say reforming because I still, every once in a while, I want to say yes. But the Lord says, let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Glory.
Right? That
Yes.
is so powerful
Yes.
because a lot of the time, sometimes you want to say yes, but you also know you got to get your laundry done. You got to get your house clean.
That's
You got to
right.
get all this other stuff. And the Lord has given you responsibilities to also do. So don't say yes if you know you're going to feel upset about it later because you got to go do all of this X, Y, and Z. Make sure that you are checking yourself. You check with yourself on, can I actually give what I say I'm going to give? And that has to do a lot with boundaries. And I think we might do boundaries around Christmas or something, but I don't know. That's I'm spitballing now, but we definitely as Christians want to give of ourselves all the time, right? But God gives us what he knows we can invest, right? So the parable of the talents is something that kind of speaks to me on that, because the Lord gave the talents each to, the master gave his servants each the talents, right? He didn't give all of them 5.
Right.
He didn't give all of them 1.
Right.
Right. And so he gave each to the ones that he knew what they would invest. Right. So it's just like that with our time. Right. We have so many hours, we have so much to invest, and we have so much energy. Right. If we can't handle 5 talents, the Lord's in his wisdom is probably not going to give us 5 talents. Right. So we can't offer up 5 talents worth of ourselves if we don't have it to give. Right. So that's why I think it's so important for us to see this. And we're the peacemakers, not people pleasers. Right. Just because you want to bring peace to a situation, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do whatever the other person wants. Sometimes it's going to hurt some people's feelings, what you have to say, but you need to be bringing the truth, right? Because that's how we are called sons of God, is when we are the peacemakers. And so that was a lot of the Lord really helping me to understand that to bring peace into a situation and to please people is 2 different things. You really cannot please everyone because you are going to offend someone.
That's right.
Jesus lived the perfect life and he offended so many people. And he made so many people upset. He didn't please everyone. So, but we are called to be sons of God, which is to be peacemakers. So
people pleasers. Somebody needed that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you, and like you said, you deal with that. There's a lot of people who deal with that that thing right there, right? And that's good.
And so, and before we move on and touch on what she talked about the people pleasers, and I'm glad that you point out the difference between peacemakers and people pleasing, because a lot of times also as believers, you can think because it's a God thing, you have to say yes. That don't mean God called you to do it.
Right.
Right.
So
I heard something from a pastor once, and it was very important for me to understand. if you say yes to something that you're not equipped to do, you're robbing someone else of the ability to say yes and the opportunity to serve in that area. And so even in churches where there's not that many people serving and you're wearing all the hats, if someone new comes in and they want to serve and they've proven themselves to be reliable and trustworthy, don't put them through the hoops, right? Let them serve, learn how to delegate, because you don't know what's on the other end of that blessing for them to be able to serve. So that was just something that I heard a pastor say once, and I was like, okay, if I say yes to everything, I'm taking away somebody's blessing potentially. Especially if I know that it's not something that I'm wanting to do. But I'm just saying yes because I don't know if anybody else is going to do it.
That's right. That's one of the things we were taught by some people who are like mentors to us. Dr. Davis, the Davises. She told me when we got into the ministry, one of the first things she told, she said, John, you can't say yes to everything. Don't say yes to everything. You got to know when to say no. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. And just move. And I'm so glad. I am so glad she told me that. I'm so glad. And like we were tested in that not too much longer after that. I'll never forget I was ministering one day and I think it's something about children or something like that. And our pastor, pastors, and they hear something like, Lord, that can build. They're like, let's do it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And there's no shade on our pastor because I love his pastor, Pastor Paul, at the Christian Center in Lawton, Oklahoma. He was like, John, he told me about like running this little after thing, something with kids and with youth. And I knew that wasn't what we were called to do. And it was like all of a sudden there was like 3-4 people giving all these ideas. And then I was like, it ain't for me to do all these people. And I had, like you said, if I'd have said yes to it, and it took away from those people from being able to do it. I knew that wasn't for me. But sometimes you want to do stuff for your pastor. It's your pastor.
Right.
But even to that, you have to know, like, you're not given that talent. You don't have that.
Right.
You know it, like you said. Yeah. You have to say no.
Yeah. And it's about discernment too.
Yes.
You want to make sure that it's not just because you just don't want to do it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not just because you don't want to do it, but it's because you spent time. The Lord is calling you in another area, and this is not the area that you're called to, right? Even though somebody else might see it as you'd be perfect for this.
Right.
This is awesome for you to do. I just want to speak to you, whoever it is that I know that I'm talking to. Just because someone thinks that you're perfect for it doesn't mean it's what you're called to in that moment. And it could just be a not yet. It doesn't have to be a no.
Right.
That's good.
So I just want you to be encouraged that just because you say no, learn how to use that. It's a full sentence. It's a full sentence.
That's right.
You can say no, thank you, no, sir, no, ma'am. But it is a full sentence, and you do have the ability to use it. And God wants you to use it. He wants you to be encouraged that where He's calling you, He's going to direct you in a few areas that you're going to have to say no to some good things. And it's just because there's good and then there's His best.
Right.
And so that's really something that I don't know who needed to hear that, but somebody needed to hear that on the end of this. Just be encouraged.
Yes.
It's okay. No is a 2-letter sentence.
That's right. Look, I'm glad you said that discernment. Let me put this out there. Okay, guys, you know what I'm saying? Now, she said discernment, right? I want you guys to understand, and I know we use church as one of the examples. This is not just about church, guys. It's anything that you have going on. So we don't want to throw shade at any pastors or the churches or anything like that ask us to do certain things that is needed to be done in the church. Trust me, have the proper discernment, like she said, and know this. There's ways you deal with those things. You'll know in your heart. You will truly know in your heart. I believe that when you get into a church, I don't think you should sit, you should serve.
Yes.
And sometimes, some of the things are not about your talent. It's really not about your talent. You know what I'm saying? But can I fill in the gap for a moment? For a particular time. So I want people to understand that first.
Yes.
So people understand, like, so what else is you go up to church? And the pastor be like, nah, I only sing. You know what I'm saying? So
and
people,
work too,
please.
Work-wise.
Yes, work-wise.
I mean, in the workforce, still a lot of us are working the 9 to 5s. Everybody's back. Everybody wanted to charge full force after 2020. They were like, I'm ready to get back into the workforce. And then it was a pendulum swing to the other direction. I struggled with feeling burnt out in my job because I just wanted to keep doing and keep going and keep, like, I just wanted to catch up. I felt like there was so much work that always needed to be done, and I felt like I was the only one to do it. Where I was just, we had a lot of new people. There was a lot of I know, especially in the healthcare industry, there was a lot of rotation out. There was travel techs, travel nurses. And so those of us who were left, it was hard because you had to pick up the slack. So a lot of people at work, if you are one of the people who, had seen a huge employment shift, you felt obligated to work as hard as you could. But it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to not work yourself to the bone, because when you work yourself to the bone, all you're left with is work. All you're left with is work. And it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Work hard, work as unto the Lord.
There you go. That is the key.
And when you work as unto the Lord, that doesn't mean work yourself to the point where all you do is work.
Let's move on. On day 13, Maria, you entered love into the challenge. John 15, 9 through 12, and 1 Corinthians 13. You stated love is an emotion and feeling, but says also it's an action and choice.
Yes.
With so many meanings of love out there today, share with us why it's only an emotion, feeling, but also not only an emotion, feeling, but also action and a choice.
Love is our greatest gift. And I want to say God is love. He's our example.
Absolutely.
He is love. And if you haven't read 1 Corinthians 13, I just want to go through it because it's 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 through 8, right? And I mean, the whole chapter is good. I mean, it's a short chapter, but this just right here sends home that question. And so I just want to use the word because that's the best answer for this question.
That's right.
That's just the best answer for this question. I don't want to try and reinvent the wheel. It's there and it's plain as day. So it says in verse 4, and I'm reading out of the She Reads Truth Christian Standard Bible. This is the one I've been using for the podcast. So if you guys have listened to the podcast, this is it. This is the one. It says, love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy, is not boastful, is not arrogant, is not rude, is not self-seeking, is not irritable, and does not keep a record of wrongs. Remember, we were talking about that fireproof box. Doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. all of these beginning words that describe love are actions, right? Patience is an act, right? When we have patience, we have to sit and wait for things, right? And patience is a posture as well. When we sit and we're patient, we're not fidgeting, we're not moving around, we don't have a worry, right? We know something's going to happen. And so we sit and wait, right? If I know it's going to take 15 minutes for my car to get washed, I'm going to sit in the car and just let my car get washed, right? Because I know that 15 minutes is going to come and go and my car is going to be washed, right? So I have that patience, right? It all has to do with that. And then the kindness, right? That's an act. When you speak to someone, how are your words sounding? Are you speaking sweetly to them with kindness, right? It doesn't envy. That's an attitude, right? We have so much more in our culture. Social media shows us how we can compare ourselves to the next person. Even Christian influencers, we can, my Bible doesn't look like that person's Bible. My highlighter doesn't look like, no, it doesn't envy, right? Because we all understand where we are. We're all under God's kingdom. So we don't have that envy. It's not boastful. I'm not telling you, hey, look at me, look at this show, look at like what I've got in the realm of social media, or look at my car, look at my job, look at my girlfriend or boyfriend, husband, wife. Like, no, it's not boastful, right? It's coming in a posture of humility. It's not arrogant, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking. And my greatest example of this is Jesus. He sought out the outcasts, right? And he didn't envy because he knew whose he was. Right? He was kind to those who were the ones who were dejected, the tax collectors, the sinners, the prostitutes. And he was patient because Lord knows those 12 disciples.
Absolutely.
You know, I always think about it. I'm like, Lord, if it couldn't have been me, because if they had kept asking me about who's going to be first in the kingdom, what's this going to be, what's our kingdom going to look like, when are you going to take over, Jesus? When are we going to defeat these Romans? No, Jesus just was patient with them. So when I think of enduring all things, Jesus on the cross, right? He came. I'm gonna get emotional. Jesus is our example of love. And he never ends.
It's good.
All glory to him.
It's important that all of those things that you mentioned there, and that's in the word there, is that it's important that you have those things. Love is important for forgiveness, guys. All those things that you explained there from the Bible. If you miss out on those things, which are examples, you know, of what the fruits are kind of like what love is, and all those things are work. You got to be able to do them. But if you're missing some of those things, it's going to be hard to forgive. You know what I'm saying? That's why I was glad that you brought love into the conversation, because sometimes it's not just for the, you know, it's not, you got to love God more. You got to love what Christ did for you more than what someone said to you. You know what I'm saying? You got to love yourself more. We'll get into that later, but you got to love yourself more. So it's important to have those qualities, all of those things, in order to forgive. That's an awesome answer.
Grateful for all the things I've seen. Grateful for all